I warned him of that. We settled up between dope and between money. And I said, I'm just going to disappear. I said, I got 3 choices. It's jail, dead, or disappear. I said, and the only one that has any appeal at all is disappear.
Hey, welcome out. My name is Joshua, and today we have an incredible podcast for you. If you've ever wondered about how God works inside of ministry or inside of this world, and kind of look back on how God draws people unto himself, today's guest is a friend of mine. His name is Chuck. He's got a lot of wisdom, a lot of hair, a lot of gray, and we're going to learn from him today. He's going to end up sharing his testimony with us, and then specifically, if you're trying to figure out what it looks like to be intentional inside of your business, or if you work inside of a company and you're like, man, I'm a Christian, I love God, He's changed my life, but how can I be a witness? How can I use my everyday work as a opportunity to witness? Then today you're going to find out a lot of cool ways of using your platform, using every opportunity to be intentional with sharing your faith. With that being said, Chuck, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Appreciate the introduction, but you might be raising some expectations. I hope not disappointingly.
No.
I hope nobody will be disappointed at that, but I've got a different than average story, to say the least.
Yeah, I believe the first time that we met, I probably called you on the phone, and I was trying to figure out where I could buy 5 pounds of beans at, coffee beans.
That's right.
Because I'm kind of a snob when it comes to my coffee. And you ended up saying some things that you could roast it. And I was like, well, how soon can I have it? And I would say within the next day or something. We worked something out. I showed up and I had some of the best coffee I had ever had in my life. Not only that, but your processing and the way that you thought was different than the way that most people think when you meet someone on spot and on location. So I was super curious about who you were, why you think the way that you do, and then you shared your testimony with me. I don't know if you remember that, but I ended up sitting down with you, and you shared some things about how God led you from out of state into state. And to start off today's show, I want to get right back into the beginning of your story. When you were far from God, what were you doing? And then what led you to Nashville?
Okay. Sounds like a good place to start, but instead of starting being far from God, let me start off in the beginning when I was super close to God.
Let's hear it.
Okay. I grew up as an Orthodox Jew. So my education from age 4 until 13, when I was bar mitzvahed, was a parochial Jewish education.
Okay.
If you're familiar with Catholic school, a parochial Jewish education is Catholic school on steroids.
I didn't know that. I didn't know this about you.
Okay. Well,
this is the first time you've shared this with me.
Okay. Well, put it this way. You don't have a whole lot of time
Every time I swing by.
to ever share time together. We get 15, 20 minutes. That's a lot of time.
That's a time.
Okay. Testimony-wise, I remember first time I did my testimony, my brother-in-law was a preacher and asked me to share a 5-minute testimony, and I went, can't do it.
Happen.
And he goes, huh? I said, I can share an hour testimony. I said, might be able to get down to 30, but, it would have to be really quick, short, sweet, and done. Okay, and it wouldn't be effective. So if it's not going to be effective, I'm just not interested in it.
Understood.
But anyway, it turned out it went a little bit longer than that, and I don't know how effective it was or not. I didn't see a lot going on. But anyway, so I grew up as an Orthodox Jew, parochial education, 8 hours a day of Hebrew education that interspersed reading, writing, and arithmetic. So when I learned to read Hebrew, and I learned to translate Hebrew, obviously, read English, translate Hebrew into English, English into Hebrew. Okay, all the grammar stuff with it that goes with it. Learn to count numbers, go back all through Scripture, and you can see all these different numbers of multiplication and division and subtraction and stuff like that. So we use the Bible as the textbook. So that was the baseline for me from age 4 to 13 was to get to that point of bar mitzvah, and I was a superstar.
Let me ask you this. Is this when you were close to God?
Oh, yeah.
When you look back on it,
Oh, yeah.
your reading, your time there, it wasn't
How can you spend time in the Word and in prayers? Because part of Orthodox Judaism is praying at the hours of prayer, 9, 12, and 2. I mean, we did that too. I mean, way, way, way more intense than anything that you'll see in the church today. I mean, if you're not going to church every day, okay, and you're not in the Word for an hour or two a day, every day, and in prayer for an hour or two a day, every day, then you're just not there. And I'm not condemning anybody or judging anybody for how they do what they do, because I fall short all the time. I fail all the time. No question about it. Fail every day.
So you're 13 years old.
So anyway, 4 to 13, I'm going through that, and I'm doing great. Skipped a grade here, skipped a grade there. At 13, everything I'd seen around me in the synagogue, which was supposed to be the place that your education plays out and how you deal with people around you and deal with others. There's no evangelism in Judaism. We're not looking for new people. Okay, we're happy with what we got. And if you want to join, okay, it's a long, rigorous year or multi-year process to do it. If you ever want to figure that out, check to the history of Ivanka Trump and how long it took her to become a Jew, having grown up as a non-Jew, over a year, but committed to do it. Anyway, by the time I got to 13 in bar mitzvah, I didn't like anything that I was seeing happening in the synagogue. So I just rejected it, tossed it all to the wind, and started in my journey down into the pit. I didn't fall into the pit. I jumped into the pit. I was doing things that were just ridiculous and stupid. I made a lot of bad choices. But as man would say, I was being blessed, okay? Because you have any idea how man counts blessing?
Bank account.
There you go.
There you go.
See, it's not a tough question.
That's an easy one.
It's a pretty simple one.
Yeah.
It's all about a scorecard of money.
So from the outside, you're being successful. You're making money from the outside. And so people would say that you're blessed.
Well, we haven't gotten to that point yet.
Okay. That's what I was
But
hearing.
at 13, I tossed it to the wind and started on down into the pit. Graduated from high school a couple months after I turned 16. Went to the University of Maryland, 1963, fall of 1963. So I'm not what's known as a young whippersnapper, but I'm pretty good. I'm on 39 right now. I'll be 38 in March. 70 was the new 45, and I started counting backwards. So
That's awesome.
So I'm there. But at 16. Some of the stuff I'd done between 13 and 16 was drink a little bit and smoke a little bit of weed and do some of this and do some of that. And when I went to University of Maryland, that's when I got involved with some amazing people in the spring of that year, spring of 64, shortly after Kennedy had been assassinated, November 1962 or 63.
I wouldn't know. You could throw out any date, and I'd be like,
November
yeah,
22nd, 1963, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I was between chemistry and zoology lab walking across the campus when I heard that he had been shot. But spring of 64, I'm hooked up with some guys that had a connection in Philadelphia, and everybody that was doing weed was pretty much the same. You want to buy enough so that you can sell a little bit and get yours for free. That was the goal. That's where I was at that point in time. But at that point in time, I met some people that had some really good sources, and I had a lot of people that would like to have some weed. So I became a weed salesman of magnitude my spring of 1964. And it destroyed my mind relative to economics, relative to money. It destroyed everything I was doing education-wise, because I was making more money than my father was making. Okay, by a lot. And now I'm just trying to figure out how to do what to do. And then from that point going forward, it was just failure in education, didn't do good in school, didn't care about school. I was going to be a doctor, then I was going to be an accountant, but basically I was a drug dealer. And none of the other stuff was going to compare.
Hey, I'm going to interrupt for a second because we've got a phenomenal opportunity for you. If you've been thinking about opening your own pressure washing company, I'd like to invite you to a free webinar. There we'll talk about the pros and cons of opening a pressure washing, and you'll get to chat with our team about whether or not you should launch a pressure washing company in your city or not. To register for this free event, go to pressurewashingpastor.com, scroll down to the little registration button, it's blue, and click on it, and we'll take care of the rest. I look forward to seeing you there. Have a great day. Now back to our show. Let me ask you a question, and we won't be here long. I just want to hear where your thoughts are. When you look at the days that you had spent doing drugs, smoking weed, is there anything that you would say that would be spiritual about smoking weed? Is it a spiritual act or a mental act? What are your thoughts there?
It depends. It depends on framework. Weed is. I look at marijuana as just, it's a miracle plant. I mean, it's a God invention. The hemp plant we were talking about while we were sitting here eating before starting the podcast, that it's an amazing plant with incredible amounts of value that has been destroyed by the government. I'm not saying anything to be a proponent of anything. I don't want anybody to get any impressions of that. But when you look at the history of what happened with marijuana, I mean, our country, the business side of country, the paper industry, pharmaceutical industry destroyed that. And that's the reality of fighting back today. But anyway, that was just the beginning. Spiritual, I mean, you get a buzz, music sounds better. I got a bunch of different stories of stuff like that.
So that is why I asked that question. I don't want to hang out here.
Right.
But for me, when I look back on the times that I had been involved in smoking weed, to me, it wasn't just a chemical exchange. I feel like, and this is my story, we all look at different things. I feel like for me, that I was opening myself up to a gateway. And so for me, I had experienced what I would say some demonic activities as it relates to experimenting. I'm not saying that you have to believe what I'm saying, but I saw things and things took place while smoking weed, and then that followed, where for me, there's a spiritual element connected to it as well. And I just wanted to see if you had any experiences.
I had my share of spiritual, but it wasn't the weed spirit. I went down the LSD, the mescaline, the mushrooms, the peyote. I went down all the psychedelics and then went down that entire journey of literally mind-altering drugs.
Yeah.
And when your mind gets altered, there's no way for your spirit not to become affected.
Hey, let me do this. Sometimes we have, I'm a coach, assistant coach at a high school, middle school, Liberty Creek. And sometimes we have parents and students that are watching. This is a great conversation and teaching moment of saying, man, going into that pathway or down that road, it's not a rainbow at the end of there's not a pot of gold at the end of the drug rainbow. It is disaster. And so just want to encourage our listeners, if there's anybody that has thought about plan, looking for meaning or purpose, find it somewhere other than inside this arena, because it'll take you further than you ever wanted to go. But
absolutely,
for sure. Sorry.
Absolutely. The only regrets that I have about that entire journey, is the impact that it had on the people around me, on my family. But today, in what I do today, I identify with drug addicts very well. There's not many people that have done anything relative to sex, drugs, rock and roll, or any depravity of life that I didn't experience in the late 1960s and early 1970s, all the way up to 1976. So let me just run down the line on that. From 64 to 76, I continued down on the journey. I switched from doing college full-time to doing college part-time as an accountant. My cover was as an auditor liaison between the state government and the federal government for highways in Maryland. And So I did a lot of audits of circuit courts and highways, did that for about 7 years, sort of as a need to show an income for the volumes of money that I was making selling drugs. So that worked out fine. Basically just hung out at a few different places that I dealt drugs at. Just 3 is all I ever did. Never sold to anybody I didn't know. Don't tell me you've got a friend that you want to introduce to me. I know better than that. I don't want to meet them. Okay. But anyway.
There's a story there, it sounds like.
As it went down that line, I went from marijuana to cocaine to heroin. Cocaine as the drug of income. Okay, and we had that conversation about the blow story and all that, and this was just a little bit before that movie is played out to be. Don't know whether we were assimilated as part of that. I can't imagine not, but I was doing, a kilo of cocaine a week as far as selling it. So that's, 2.2 pounds a week, selling it at a couple of $1,000s an ounce. So it doesn't take much to figure out that $50,000 a week is running through your hands every week. That's substantial. Not my money.
So you got it made. You're rolling. You're making money.
It's a way to look at it, but put it this way: when you're out at the club, the guy with the drugs, the guy with the money, ends up to be the guy with the girls. So it all flowed together. But anyway, over that course of time, 1976, there was a 3-day period, a Wednesday and Friday. Had a young 16-year-old kid wanted to buy an ounce of coke from me, and I said, I can't do that. And he goes, he said, what do you mean? I said, I don't know what you're talking about. And then he knew everything about the guy I was buying from. And I'm going, whoa. Then 2 days later, I stopped into one of the 3 places that I was dealing cocaine. And early in the afternoon, I was going there to get something to eat on a Friday afternoon, start the weekend. And my friend Julie was working the bar, and she just shook her head, and she says, yeah, there were some guys in here laying pictures all over the bar of you at the 3 different places where you were dealing drugs and asking questions, and I knew that was it. So I just went back, cleared all my stuff out of my apartment, got all the drugs and money together, went over to the guy I was buying dope from, and let him know what happened those 2 days, to let him know that if that's coming at me, then there's no way it's not coming at him, since the first one that came to me is telling me about who I buy my drugs from, which is him. And
so as a friend, you were given a warning.
He didn't heed the warning. It was business, but it was friendship. We were friends too. We did a lot of stuff together, but he was a very, very successful person in his cover life, I guess you could call it. And I won't mention what he did because somebody might put 2 and 2 together, and that's not a good thing to do. But anyway, I warned him of that. We settled up between dope and between money, and I said, I'm just going to disappear. I said, I got 3 choices. It's jail, dead, or disappear. I said, and the only one that has any appeal at all is disappear. So I came to Middle Tennessee. I had a brother here that wanted to start an advertising agency. Had bugged me for a while, and I had plenty of money. So I called him. I said, I'm coming. He goes, when? I said, right now. I did some final prep stuff around home, went by my parents' house and gave my mom the key to my apartment, said, my buddy would give a call. Okay, in a couple of weeks, he'd come pick the key up. He'd take care of the apartment, clean it out, pull it up to his farm and store it. And I said, if anybody asks you where I am, you just don't know. I said, I may be in trouble, but right this minute, I'm not. So the best thing you can do for me not to be in trouble is say nothing. So I don't care who comes knocking on the door, what they say, it doesn't matter. Okay, you just don't know. Just don't know where he is. Okay. Came to Nashville.
Did that work?
Did it work? Yeah, for me.
Did people come to the house asking where you were?
No.
Okay.
No. But it worked for me.
Okay.
3 months later, it was the largest cocaine bust in the history of the country. And the guy that I had warned is the one that got busted. So I did what I could do. I'm not saying that he could have done anything to change anything for his destiny, but, I did the best I could do to, I guess you'd call it honor among criminals or something like that.
Why don't you think he listened to what you had to say?
Well, him and his girlfriend were laying on the couch in the den naked, and he had a big mirror-covered table with a mound of cocaine on it. And all he had said to me when I came in, he says, "Man, you're paranoid." He says, "Why don't you just go do some coke? Let's just party some." And I said, "I don't think you understand what I'm saying." I believe he was just totally, totally whacked out. And in fact, it came full circle a couple of years later when I ran into him at the place that my friend had warned me. And he had a couple of guys there to grab me, and I don't know what his condition was at the time, whether he was out on pending appeals or whatever. I don't know the situations. I tried to stay as far away from that as possible. But and there was no internet. There was no place to look. You'd have to go search a whole lot of stuff and make a lot of phone calls.
I forget about
that.
And
I didn't need to be surfacing, period. I was fortunate. But he had said, "Man," he says, "you must have ratted me out." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And my friend was standing at the end of the counter, and she was shaking like a wet rabbit. And I said, "Hey, come on over here." And she came over, and I said, "When's the last time you saw me?" And she goes, "That day." I said, "Why don't you tell our friend here that day?" And she goes, "Yeah." She says, "You came in here, and I told you there were some people that came in here laying pictures out all over the counter, asking about you here, there, and whatever." And I could see his jaw drop and almost hit the bar. And then he just waved off his buddies and said, "Man, I thought that was a dream." So his mind got refreshed to what really happened that day. I can't say that's good, bad, or indifferent, but I know I did what I could do, to try to help him if there was a way to stop it at that point in time. I knew my whole thing is I'm disappearing, because I don't like debt or jail, and if I get found, then then I'll deal with it then. And God watched over to me, and so that didn't happen. So that was all good.
You land in Nashville. You work for your brother.
My brother and I started an advertising agency in October 1976. Everything was rock and roll. I grabbed everything that he had in town and moved it 30 miles outside of town and rented a 4-bedroom house between Lebanon and Hartsville, trying to hide for the pending possibility that there'll be a knock on the door and I'm going to get busted and taken to jail.
Did you stop doing drugs by that time, or were you still using?
Well, I cold turkeyed off of heroin and cocaine. I was a speedballer. I was doing heroin and cocaine intravenous. And that ended instantly. I didn't do any more of that. But I switched over to Percodans, Percocets, Placidils, Red Meanies, Green Meanies, Jack Daniels, smoking some weed.
So you stayed a little bit active.
Well, put it this way. When your day is upside down and your body is going through all kinds of gyrations, and you sleep when you fall asleep for an hour or two and then wake back up, you just do whatever you can do to possibly medicate yourself to something basic. So I was a big nighttime type person. And living out there was no cable, no nothing. It was just, local channels and stuff like that. And so the only thing that was on in the middle of the night was them televangelists. And you know what happens with that?
What happened?
The word of God does not come back void. But I would sit there and smoke dope and drink whiskey and laugh at them. It was the funniest thing I'd ever seen in my life.
Do you remember who you were watching?
I can tell you who the best one is, the one that had the greatest impact on me.
Who was it?
Gene Scott.
Gene Scott. Talk to me.
Gene Scott was incredible. He would charge you to watch. I mean, he would turn off the station, play some traveling music, and he had fancy dogs. He had these really, really neat Schutzen, either German Shepherds or Dobermans. He was smoking fancy cigars and stuff like that.
And he was preaching.
He was teaching. He wasn't preaching.
Okay.
And his teaching was bringing back stuff that I knew from the Word. He was an Old Testament teacher, correlating it back to the New. And look him up sometime. Check up Gene Scott. I'm sure there's some YouTube stuff out there for Gene Scott that'll turn you upside down. But anyway.
Was there a moment of teaching, or was it a progression of teaching?
No. That was just input. I mean, I was getting inputted into my brain, okay, just information and understanding what this guy was trying to say. And then a couple of years later, I had met my wife and got married in 1978. And we had a couple of kids, one in 1980, one in 1981. Let me back up just a little bit back to before coming here. When I stopped working for the government in 1972, okay, I started a business of chimney sweeping. I was a chimney sweep from 72 to 76 there, and then did that here from like 78 to 82. So had to have something cover back there, okay, for the money I was making in drugs. Here I had to have an income, and it was a good business. So I had a really good chimney cleaning business here, a few trucks and some employees, and it did well. But I had a bad situation come up in 1982. I had an uninsured truck sitting up behind my house, Harding Place, at the corner of Harding Place and Franklin Road in Oak Hill, and it rolled off the hill through the garage of the house next door and reparked the Cadillac into the kitchen. And I didn't have insurance, and my neighbor was teaching me a lesson on business, so he wasn't claiming it on his homeowners until I was bankrupted. So I went sideways down to zero, needed something to do. I was looking for a job. December the 14th, 1981, 6 o'clock at night at the corner of Harding Place and Trousdale. In the rain, I'm getting ready to go look for a job. And sitting there at that red light, and I've been back there a couple of times since then. I was back there 40 years later at that same time, just to memorialize the moment. But I cried what I call the faithless prayer. If there's a God, and if there's a Jesus, help. Because I didn't believe in any of it.
How old were you?
In 81, I was 34.
So 34, prayed a hopeless prayer. What happened?
Not a hopeless prayer, a faithless prayer. There's a big difference. If it's a hopeless prayer, I don't know why I'm here.
So a faithless prayer.
Faithless prayer. If there's a God, if there's a Jesus, help. I didn't believe in either one of them, okay? And I walked and knocked on these doors looking for who I'm supposed to have this appointment with, and there's no answers at any doors. There's no numbers on any doors, and I'm knocking. I'm getting frustrated, and then there's a door that's ajar, and I knock it open, and there's a guy sitting there, and I said, "Are you Mr. So-and-so?" And he goes, "No." And he says, "What are you looking for?" I said, "I'm looking for a job." He says, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Well, if you want to, come on in and sit down for a second, and maybe I can do something for you." And he hands me a piece of paper, and he says, "This is just one question, and it's just true or false. Most important thing in my life is my relationship with God, followed by my family, followed by my work. Just yes or no." It took me a long time to answer that question. I'm serious. It probably 2 minutes went
so
by.
Rich.
I was just trying to be honest.
Hey, let me stop. Our listeners, I want you to think through this. If you were slid a piece of paper and written on it was, do you love God first, family second, and work third? Would you write down a yes? That's a powerful question, and it requires a lot of processing, because if what we do determines what we love, we have to ask the question, what do we spend our time doing? And sometimes business and family can take the most important position, and that's God.
That's right.
It's so good, Chuck.
Well,
what did you write? So what did you write?
I answered yes.
Okay.
And before I answered yes, I thought back to the prayer that I just had prayed. And in my mind, I'm saying, is this really you? Is this how you're revealing yourself to me? Okay. So this guy that was sitting behind the desk there, I'll leave him to be unnamed also, had a giant King James Bible on his desk. I mean, he had a Bible that had to be 12 inches deep, and it was wore out.
1800s edition.
And he was quoting scripture backward, forward, whatever. But one thing led to another. He was an unscrupulous person, to say the least.
Unscrupulous.
Unscrupulous. He was a criminal. Okay. And he was just using. Okay, God as a front. Okay, which it took me a little while to figure out. But over the next 5 days, okay, I spent all my time other than at work reading the Word, writing what God was putting in my mind and heart, and crying. And it was and my wife was ready to have me committed. She says, "There's something going on, and you're going crazy." And I went, "No, I'm not going crazy. I mean, I believe God has just revealed Himself to me, and I'm just trying to spend time understanding what He's trying to say." I was having a spiritual awakening and enlightening an experience.
Hey guys, Brady Ridings here with Brown's Pressure Washing. Wanted to take a minute to say, if you're starting a pressure washing company, I have got something awesome for you. We offer something called a boot camp. It's a 3-day experience where you will come to Nashville and you will definitely have an experience. It's hands-on training, breakout sessions. You get a dinner with the three of us, myself, Joshua, and Josiah. It is a wonderful event and a no-brainer investment into the knowledge that you need in starting a pressure washing company. I wanted to let you know I've got a Calendly link on pressurewashingpastor.com where you can go and schedule a call with me personally to talk a little bit more about boot camps if that's something that you're interested in, and I hope that you will do it.
On that Saturday, on the 19th, 8 o'clock in the morning, I had a business trip that we had gone on, myself and this guy, to go to Florida to raise some venture capital for the particular business that they were in. And I don't want to get into particulars because I want to share a little bit in the last time that we have about, how to be and do what it is in the marketplace.
Yep.
So that week was just was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. But anyway, that Friday night when I came back from interrupting the trip, we were on our way down to Florida. I turned around and came back from Atlanta on an airplane one way. And that was an interesting piece there too. But anyway, my wife and kids were at her parents' house. She wasn't expecting me back until Sunday. And when I got back, I called to say, I'm back and things changed. And she goes, "Well, you want us to come over there?" I said, No. I said, "I'm still going through processing a bunch of stuff that's going on." God had blessed me incredibly financially during that week in selling the electronics that company represented. I made 3 months worth of income in 3 days. It was, it was crazy. It was ridiculous. But anyway, I just stayed there, and I went by one of the clubs I used to go to and work at some, and everything was unattractive and distasteful. I mean, nothing felt right. It was weird. Okay, went back to the house and did some reading, writing, crying. Next morning, got up, went to Pancake Pantry, and I'm sitting there at a table like at 6:15 in the morning, and a friend of mine, a dentist that I used to eat breakfast in the morning with when I was chimney cleaning, I used to sit at a back table of regulars in Pancake Pantry, a bunch of people from the music business, and this one doctor that was a dentist at the time. He was in there with his daughter, just giving her 16th birthday present, 57 Chevy convertible, completely restored, red and white. And it was just beautiful. But so I sat down and nodded over to him, to say hey, and he looked at me and he goes, "You're different." And he had tried to witness to me. No, not tried to. He had witnessed to me several times sitting at that table in Pancake Pantry during the years before.
So good.
And I said, "What do you mean different?" He says, "Tell me what happened to you." I hadn't seen him in probably 3 months, 4 months, something like that. And I told him what had happened with the chimney business and the accident and all that stuff. And, told him about my encounter that I had. And he said, "Well, God's got you." He says, "You're it. Congratulations. Just follow him. That's it." Anyway, we went outside, looked at the car. He was just all excited. And I said, "Well, what do I do next?" He says, "Just listen. He'll tell you. Just listen. Keep doing what you're doing. Just listen." I start down the road and I'm crying. I couldn't get 100 feet without pulling over the side of the road, all the way from Hillsborough Village to Regent Drive, where we were living at the time. And it was crazy. I just finally made it there. My brother-in-law was living around the corner, and he was associate pastor or minister at church in Hillsborough Village. Ashwood was the name of the church. And I knock on the door at 8 o'clock in the morning, and his wife comes to the door, and I'm reasonably tall. I used to be about 6'6" or 6'7". I'm probably about 6'4" or 6'5" now, but my brother-in-law's even taller than me. Okay. And so his wife comes to the door, and she's not very tall at all. And she goes, "Are you okay?" And crying. And I go, "Yeah, I'm okay." She goes, "Are Joy and the kids okay?" "Yeah, they're fine." I said, "Where's Steve?" And he comes to the door, and he's rubbing his eyes. And, "What are you doing?" I said, "You need to take me to the church and plunge me in the water." And he goes, "What?" I said, "I need to be baptized." He goes, "Don't you just want to wait until tomorrow for the invitation?" And I went, "No." I said, "I want to go right now."
That's so rich.
He says, "You want to call Mama and Daddy and Joy and the kids?" And I said, "No." I said, "I just want to go and get plunged in the water."
Yeah.
So the three of us went and plunged me in the water. And it was invigorating. It was totally different. And then the next day at church, they made an announcement that I'd been baptized the day before, and I got people coming and congratulating me and all that. And went to a Sunday school class, and I'm asking questions, and they're going, No. You got to take some time to get that kind of answer. And I went, "What?" They go, "That's not an easy answer." And I'm going, "What do you mean it's not an easy answer? I'm just asking you, what about this miracle stuff? I mean, all that crazy stuff that happened on the day of Pentecost when the Holy Spirit came and the fire and the tongues and all that stuff. I mean, did that really happen?" "Yeah." "Well, what about now?" "Well, that's a tough subject to talk about. We need to have a conversation. That takes time. There's a lot that you need to understand first." I said, "I'm a salesman. Can you just say yes or no? And then we can go from there whether I want to pursue it." And it was sort of crazy. But I started going to all kinds of different prayer groups of all different kinds of people, meeting everywhere you could think of in the morning, meeting in game rooms, okay, meeting in churches, meeting in businesses, meeting in restaurants, all different kinds of people from all different kinds of backgrounds. It just didn't hone in on one or another, and I just wanted more.
Chuck, let me make sure I make it clear. You went almost instantaneously from darkness to light. Would you agree with that?
Oh, it was beyond that. Mm-hmm. Okay. There was a 5-day period in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
I could call wilderness, but it wasn't wilderness like the wilderness that Jesus went through. Don't let me put that in anybody's mind at all. But if I could tell you the stuff that I went through during that 5 days, it was not a pretty thing. Mm-hmm. It was an ugly thing along with the pretty stuff. There was a lot of ugly stuff in there too.
It's rich.
But
let's do this because I really want to get into your mindset.
Okay.
And
let me just say one more thing about it.
You got it.
The guy that was in there with the big King James, I ran into 20 years later. okay, on the porch of Cracker Barrel in Mount Juliet. And I looked over at him, and he looked at me, and I mentioned his name. The first words out of his mouth 20 years later, hadn't seen him in 20 years, okay, were, if there's anything that I did to hurt your faith, would you please forgive me? How strong is that one relative to God working on a life? I mean, he knows what we went through. He knows the encounter. He knows what he saw God do in that 5-day period.
Let me interject. Okay. If we have any listeners that are following the story, the same God that did it for Chuck, the same God that did it for me, the same God that did it for Scott that's in this room helping make this take place is the same God that can do it for you. I want to encourage you. I want to remind you that you're no more than one step away from a life of faith. He loves us. He's died for us. It's proven. We're chatting with a gentleman that is 77 years old. Almost. And has experienced the goodness and the grace and the forgiveness and the love. And if he can love someone like us, he can definitely love someone like you. Oh, yeah. And so I want to encourage you there. And then for the business owners, for those that own businesses, for those that work inside of the marketplace, I want us to start processing this question of how to use our time intentionally. Yes, we might have a gadget. Yes, we want to maybe increase sales. Yes, we want to maybe lead and have a vision for the future or help our visionary have success in integrating the system. And yes, we want profits and cash flow and products. But when we're doing all of these things, are there things that we can do to be intentional with our work as a witness? And so that's where we're going to go into now with my friend and share a little bit of like, how do we or how do you use your business or the workplace as an opportunity to witness?
Great question, and that's exactly where I was headed. Exactly next. Thank you for the segue. It was perfect. The thing to understand is this: is we've got vocation and we've got avocation. Okay, our vocation is those that are saved by the blood of Jesus, those that are in God's kingdom, which is here on earth right now, and will be forevermore. Our purpose is his purpose. He told us, Jesus told us straight up, love God, love people.
So good.
How do you do it? You just do it. You love God by loving people.
And look, I cannot stop and not just say what you just said. Our purpose is his purpose.
Right. Everything else is a byproduct. If we will be doing what he has set out for us to do, everything else, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and everything else will be added to you. And it's not a pile of stuff. Stuff is just a little tiny piece of it, but too many people keep score on the little tiny piece. The rest of it is just so much greater.
Why do we get distracted thinking that our vocation is something other than God's purpose?
It's humanity. It's living in a flesh tent. That's all it is. It's just the way we are. It's the way we are surrounded. I have people all the time, preachers all the time, telling me, why do you do what you do? And I'm going, well, I do what I do because it's what God's shown me to do, and it works. And and it's just the way it is. So let me focus in on that and bring together all of the learned lessons that I got. And we had talked about this before. Being intentional, okay? When I get into an encounter with a new person, the first thing on my mind is this a God moment? Every single time. Okay, I went through this a long time ago, maybe 25 years ago. I said to God, who am I supposed to talk to? Am I supposed to throw tracts out? What am I supposed to do? And he said, I'll let you know. Who am I supposed to talk to? I'll let you know. And then finally he let me know about 3 or 4 days later when he said, when somebody asks you, how you doing? He says, the answer is, I've never been better in my entire life. Okay? And some people are going to stop and go, what? And other people are just going to walk right away because they didn't really care about what they said to you anyhow. They didn't really mean, how are you doing? It's just a euphemism. It's just people say that as a polite kindness. But when somebody responds and they go, what? And I had this happen to me last week at Publix. It happens all the time. I still do it from time to time. I don't do it all the time, but I do it some of the time. There's so much more to do. But it was like when they say, really, you've never been better? I'm going, yeah. And they go, why? And I'm going, because I've never been this close to heaven before. And they go, what? And I go, I've never been this close to heaven before. I'm going to heaven. Are you? And they go, what? And I'm going, hey, 10 minutes from now, I'll be 10 minutes closer to heaven. So when someone asks me how you doing, what could I possibly say than never been better before because of my destiny? That's what's important. And when that becomes important, valuing your destiny based on the sacrifice of Jesus, based on God's plan from before the world was formed, okay, and then being empowered by his Spirit to be, to do, and to watch what God does, and then to testify to it. What more could you ask for? Okay, and all the rest of it is gravy. Do I work? Sure, I work. Work all the time. Okay, still work all the time. So now there's another piece. It's like I'm in a little tiny coffee shop, kiosk type thing in the front of a church in Old Hickory. It's donation based. Okay, there is no price list. I make the best coffee you could possibly want, both extraction-wise and brewing. Plus, I've been a coffee roaster since like 2006 or 2007. That's what I did. Second, third, fourth, fifth career. Who knows what? I don't count it. I mean, it's avocation. It's not vocation. It's all about how do I reach the next person for Jesus? And is there somebody to reach? Is there somebody to encourage? And I know that there's people that are going to watch and listen to this that are in either or both categories. And however that is, God's got that figured out. That's not my problem. I'm in sales. He's in management. The rest of it's pretty simple. But so when someone says to me at the coffee shop, and I go, yeah, we just raise money for transitional housing for the homeless. So all the drinks that we sell go to that. And then I sell beans and make a little bit of money doing that. And they go, why do you do that? And I go, did you hear about the guy who was raised from the dead? And they go, what? I go, did you hear about the guy who was raised from the dead? And they go, you mean like Jesus? And I go, yeah, you heard about him. How's that working for you? That's the opener of the conversation. How does that happen? Okay, it's about being intentional. And we had this little conversation a little earlier too. When I was in advertising, I learned how to be successful in advertising. I know I can't make anybody buy anything, but I know when it's time for them to buy, I know how to be in the front of the line. And the key is the simple 3-step process.
All right,
Attract attention, deliver a message, promote retention.
Give me an example.
Okay, so you want an example from...
you gave me one earlier.
I gave you one from advertising in cars. You want from something else? You want something from
if you can
from
do
a Jesus encounter?
You can do it as good as you did it earlier, because it was perfect the way that we chatted about it.
Oh, okay.
I just want those that are listening.
Yeah, this was back in it's probably the late 70s or early 80s. I'm not sure, but anyway, our focus on our advertising agency that my brother and I started was car dealerships. Okay, we were doing like 8 car dealerships all within 30 miles of Nashville. None of the main ones downtown, but the ones in the suburbs and the periphery and that little cities that are within 30 miles. So we had a client named McMahon Chevrolet, okay, in Rivergate. And we did a radio blitz like we did for the weekend to get that place just loaded up. And I did a little voiceover stuff from time to time. And this is basically what the copy was for this one commercial. This Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at McMahon Chevrolet, we'd like to say that we've got Justin Timberlake and Britney Spears. I almost said Jessica Simpson, but I know it's not. Justin Timberlake and Britney Spears going to be here all 3 days, Friday evening, Saturday all day, Sunday all day, but we can't say that because they're not going to be here. Instead, we're going to have clowns, we're going to have hot dogs, we're going to have games for the kids, we're going to have cars that were sold or being sold below dealer cost, not invoice, not super down, but below invoice. We'll show you the invoices. McMahon Chevrolet, and we'd say it over and over, and it was a basic, simple 30-second spot. Some of them were a minute long, but to attract their attention, it's Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake.
Let's go.
Not really.
Not really.
But where's that at? Those people are nuts.
Yeah.
They got hot dogs, they got cars, they got whatever. Let's take the kids and see what the place is like. That's the key. You can't make anybody do anything. Then another one that we had was Baba's Waterbeds back about the same time. It was Baba's. The attention attractor was just the comfort of Baba's, falling back into a nice, warm, floating waterbed. So you got to get someone's attention first. You got to deliver some kind of message to them. And then you got to make them or seed the ground so that they'll remember it. And most of the time it's through repetition. But if you're good enough on the front side, and that's where I'm at today, I just want to have the conversation. I just don't know who I'm supposed to talk to. So the game is pretty simple. All I do, I have people say, man, you do this, you do this, you do this, you do this. And I'm going, no. I do a lot of different things, but I only do two things, really. I show up and I tell stories. I do those two things. And I have a purpose when I show up and tell my story, and it's about reaching somebody with the love and message of Jesus or encouraging them in their walk with Jesus to be someone that is a reproducer, someone that shares the gospel, someone that makes disciples.
Chuck, two things. One thing I know about you is you're not annoying. And there are people who are like, evangelism explosion or, hey, do you know where you're going to go when you die? And it's like they're intentional, but it almost comes off like they're doing it because they're on an assignment and they're supposed to do it versus the way you come across when you share it. Drinking the cup of coffee with somebody is almost as valuable to you as, trying to be intentional with the message. And so that's one thing I would say, like, you're an excellent example and you could teach others how to do what they do in their field. And so one thing I'd say is if you need somebody to coach you on how to be intentional, go ahead and check out Uncommon Grounds at Old Hickory Church in the Nazarene. You can meet Chuck. You can buy beans from him. I get 5 pounds of beans because it's the best beans around.
And it's a good blend of beans called Living Water.
And even the name Living Water is to create interest where someone might say, hey, why do you call it Living Water? And it gives him the opportunity to share the faith. I want to say this, Chuck, and we've only got a few more minutes. You almost seem like you're a missionary, but I know that's not possible.
No.
Okay.
I am a missionary.
Are you sure?
I'm a missionary. Goodness gracious, I got 2 people right here. And however many people that are watching this, you are in my mission field this moment. The mission field is wherever you are. You don't go to the mission field. In my world, the mission field comes to you. It's where you are in any moment. If you feel like you're a missionary.
Well, if you're in the mission, you've got to be enlisted or you got to sign up. Now, let me share something with you. I was a part of a denomination that will remain nameless. And inside of our children's ministry, This was the definition taught to children on what a missionary was. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
And I'm not trying to shoot. I'm not trying to throw darts. I'm trying to say, can we stop and reflect and rethink the way that we look at what a missionary is? This is the definition that was used. A missionary is called by God, sent by the church to make disciples of other nations. That was what the staple definition to teach children of what a missionary was. And I didn't think anything of it. I just thought, yeah, that's what a missionary is. It's someone that God calls out of Sunday school or at a youth camp, and they sign up saying, I feel like I'm called to be a missionary. And then they raise their own funding, and then they get shipped over to another country. And for many, that does work, and it's okay to be in that. God uses that for sure. But we limit, and then we almost educate the thought that's this: you're not a missionary if you're not called by God, sent by the church to make disciples in other nations. And it's like, what if you're a missionary? Chuck, you're a missionary. And I think that's the message that you can teach people like me and people that are business owners, is that, man, we can turn our workspace into a mission field of using our logos, using our brand, using our cleaning. And if not, we may not be in the battle. If we're not using our platforms, it might be our platforms and not God's platforms. And why would I want to run a business that's not God's? Why would I want to run my own mission? Like, wouldn't it make sense? And so as we close out, what would be your last words for our listeners, for our guests on, hey, any encouragement, any wisdom, anything that you want to share from your heart, as it relates to this conversation of our frameworks, being intentional and being a missionary in the mission field?
I'm not a real big fan of last words.
Okay.
I'm just a fan of effective words, and there's no more importance in effect than kingdom words. Okay, if you want to experience the use of kingdom words in your life, in the lives of others, okay, realize that you're living this minute in God's kingdom. His kingdom has come from heaven to earth. We pray that in the Lord's Prayer, your will be done here on earth as it is in heaven. It's here, okay? The action is here, okay? God's on the throne in heaven. Jesus is our advocate. Whispering is here. Every time the devil uses our shortcomings and failures, and the devil's in there whispering to God, going, hey, look what Chuck did. Look what he did. Look what Josh did. Look what Scott did. Look what whoever did. Okay? And Jesus is just going, hey, Dad, blood, 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 blood. It's covered. It's taken care of. The point that we have is to understand that the Spirit, God the Spirit, God with us in the moment, living in us, in our hearts, and empowering us and comforting us and counseling us and directing us, is the one that's here present right now to stay plugged into. Stay plugged into the Spirit. Speak to the Spirit daily. Listen to the Spirit daily. In the Word, you'll see the Spirit everywhere. You'll hear Him speaking everywhere. In your prayers, you'll sense Him cheering you on as you're speaking to God, giving you the words to say to speak to God, giving you grunts and groans when you can't even find the words to speak to God.
So good.
And then our purpose is to rest. Show up, tell the story, give God the glory, and testify what you've seen Him done, because that's how it works.
Well, Well, Chuck, it has been a pleasure. Those were not last words. They are kingdom words, and I appreciate you. And this ain't the last time that I'll see you. It's not the last time that we'll continue this message. But I want to thank our listeners for checking out. This is one of our first, testimonial interviews, on the podcast. We're going to have more of these. If you know anybody that you think would find value or needs to hear this message, do us a favor. Share it with those that may own businesses or those that may need to know that God loves anybody. No matter where you're at, God loves everybody. And we're no more than one step away from a God who loves us. And so, Chuck, thank you for being our guest. And until next time, peace.